Introduction. The name of the game. Do you think you're worthy of love? If you were honest with yourself, what would you say? If you asked me this same question 7 years ago, I would have said no. I didn't believe I was worthy of love. I didn't feel attractive, and self-confidence seemed like something from a fairy tale. I disliked my appearance. I didn't look like those men in magazines. I wasn't some rich hunk. I didn't have a great career. I didn't think I was anything special. My lips might have said, "Sure, I'm worthy of love," but deep down, my heart believed something different. If you were honest with yourself, are there any areas in your life where your heart might say, "I'm not worthy of love"? Do you have any places in your heart, even a single one, where you feel afraid of being seen because if they really knew me, if they really saw me, they wouldn't love me. I can't measure up, or I can't share that with others. If I do, they'll dislike me, or I just don't feel like I belong. I don't fit in. If you answered yes, like almost every person on the planet, you are probably struggling with some insecurity. In some shape or form, most of us crave love. Love is a need, a powerful drive. We all want to feel attractive and desirable. Whether or not you think you deserve love, you probably hope for it. Even if love is something that spooks you, it is a very human need. If you believe deep down you aren't worthy of love, your heart will stand at a fork in the road. Give up on love or change to become worthy of it. In most cases, we'll switch between both paths. The path of giving up sucks and it's miserable. More on that later. The other path is tricky and more confusing to walk. For starters, how does one become worthy of love? Well, from my eyes at the age of 20, I thought to myself, what do people find attractive? Confidence, fame, money, ambition, a good career, physical fitness? This is usually what you see portrayed on sexy book covers, right? Some absolute hunk next to a photoshopped woman with perfect hair in some passionate title. For one thing, the hunk is always with some beautiful woman. He's super rich, a spy, or has some kind of mystery or thing that makes him special. I didn't think I had much special about me, and I certainly don't look like a photoshopped model. Even if you're not looking, it's hard not to catch a glimpse and feel unworthy. Whether it's from television, your computer screen, or even your friends and family, the talk going round is that's what attractive looks like. You hear all these stories of people throwing themselves at famous rock musicians and concerts, K pop bands, idols, billionaires. What do they all seem to have in common? Waves of people who love and admire them. How'd they get that? Well, for a young man or woman feeling like they're unworthy of love, what's the next logical step down if you want love? Easy, I thought. Acquire at least some of those attractive traits that I saw in those special people. You might work out. Maybe you fight for a high earning job. Maybe you start a business and get rich. Maybe you develop artistic talents. Maybe you try to get smarter, read lots of books, and study. Maybe you try to dress better, use more makeup, or even start a YouTube channel or podcast. Maybe you try to excel in a sport or video game. Maybe you try to be more supportive and give more to charity. Maybe you get into volunteering. Maybe you even become a priest or pastor or just become more suave and charming. Stronger, smarter, richer, faster, prettier, well known, skilled. If you aren't attractive and you want to be, the natural response is to become attractive in one field or another. These are the games we play to get love, and the name of the game is yes because. In other words, I'm worthy of love because. So I ask again, are you worthy of love? Your lips can say yes, but does your heart really know it? Take a moment, a real difficult moment. Look into your heart and ask it, what are you doing to receive love? Odds are, if you search deep enough, you'll find something that surprises you. I find things in me that surprise me to this day, and I'm writing a book about this. That scares me a good bit. Why is that? Because I still have to examine my heart's motivations for everything I do daily. You may land that acting career, write that book, finish that project, or launch your business, but every time, stop, get one on one with your heart, and not your head, your heart. Say, "Heart, why do you want to do this? Why do you want to do what you want to do?" Make no mistake, the game is scary. It's a really scary thing. It's scary because you never realize you're playing until you've wagered years of your life and lost. And what's worse, just as you'll look at yourself and feel, "I'm not worthy of love," or "I'm only worthy of love because," so can it be easy to look at others and think, "They're not worthy of love," or "They're only worthy of love because." Do you have a yes because? Are you doing anything, dreaming for something with a desire to be validated because you don't feel like you're enough? In other words, are you cleaning the outside of your cup? Do you ever notice on the news how it seems like famous person after famous person turns out to be a total jerk? We see videos of waiters getting yelled at, servants getting heckled, spouses being abused. A friend of mine said something that I think most people nowadays feel. "I'm more surprised when people who are well known turn out to be good, authentic people." Not to throw shade at those who are well known as a group. There are many people who have good hearts and are famous, wealthy, or well known. But there are also many people whose fame, wealth, and success only brings to light an inside of who they are and what they value that does not match their outside. In the words of Jesus, who could really slap it down on this topic, "Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You clean the outside of the cup and dish, but inside they are full of greed and self-indulgence. Blind Pharisee! First clean the inside of the cup and dish, and then the outside also will be clean. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You are like whitewashed tombs, which look beautiful on the outside, but on the inside are full of the bones of the dead and everything unclean. In the same way, on the outside you appear to people as righteous, but on the inside you are full of hypocrisy and wickedness." The Pharisees were major players in the game. They wore extra long tassels, dressed in priestly robes, and tried to appear holier than thou. After reading this far, you'll probably agree, at least to some extent, the game sucks. But translating that truth to your heart is a lengthy process that can sometimes take years. And if your head knows it, but your heart does not, you'll still be playing. Picture a gigantic imaginary store. In this gigantic store, the shelves are lined with people who willingly put themselves on shelves and set their own price according to what they believe their value is. Those on the shelves are hoping to get picked by a shopper. To afford the price, the shopper will need to have enough currency. What is the currency here? Desire, image, attractiveness, likability. The shoppers usually have the most currency and are able to afford taking their pick. The store is split into different categories: friends, employees, soulmates. It's a bit strange, but stay with me here for this and it will all make sense in a moment. In this store, a woman is shopping for a husband in the soulmate section. She passes by a fancy box with an absolutely ripped dude on the front. The box is expensive, with gold lettering, "The man of your dreams." In the box, behind some plastic, the guy is praying, flexing, and posing, and he has all the smooth talk you could imagine. He's practiced, and he knows how to sell himself well. He's got the right verses, the right words, and the right prayers. He's been pulled off of that shelf more than a few times, and he knows what he's doing. But he's not a shopper because he keeps ending up back on the shelf. He has yet to find that "till death do us part," or maybe he did and rejected it. Either way, he, like many of us, is a player in the game. He's stuck on the shelf, hoping to get picked by someone he finds attractive. What is he doing that makes him a part of the store? His heart is trying to sell himself. On the back, here are some of the things his label might read: "I'm worthy of love because I'm physically attractive, because I'm talented, because I can earn money, because I have good career prospects, because I'm well known, because I'm respected, because I love Jesus, because I study the Bible, because I'm kind, because I'm faithful, tall, sexy, and I'm a good person." Fancy box, isn't it? She's probably going to pick that box if she can afford it over others. Why? Because the outside is all she has to go on, and the cover seems desirable. She will be spending equal attractiveness to get him off that shelf. Then it may cost her years of her life, and her payment could end up being her heart. What will your dream partner spend their heart on? Most people buy off the cover, but they'll keep off the interior. If your cover doesn't look appealing, it may feel like your interior just doesn't matter, and that's a harsh thing to feel. Here's the problem with the game: it really appears to work. If this woman could, she'd pick up that fancy box and walk on by. Sure, she might set it back years later, but that's years later. She's a shopper. She's sought after and desired. What does she think she wants and needs as a player in the game? Someone else who is equally or more sought after and desired than herself. Suddenly, looking for a partner becomes like searching for a valuable product. The same is true for many other aspects in life, like searching for friends or employees or business partners. If you're average, like almost every person on the planet, you might look over and think, dang, my cover isn't anything like that. What do I do when there's people like that on the shelf next to me? Whether or not you want to play the game, you may feel increasing pressure to join the longer you stand on the shelf alone. You may think, maybe my price is too much. I should make it cheaper and make a bit of an effort on my cover, too. So, what do you do to be more appealing? Maybe you go hard with it. Fight for 10 years of excruciating pain and hard work, and you become the fancy box on that shelf. You've developed some outwardly attractive traits: wealth, fame, skill. Lord knows what sacrifices your heart made for a fancy cover, but you may not recognize yourself in the mirror anymore. Yet you're a shopper now. You made it, as it were. You've become sought after and desired. Now you can finally attempt to fill that empty portion in your cup. Prove a few people who judged you that they're wrong, or so you think. You pass by person after person. Nope, not my type. Nope, not fit enough. Nope, wrong color hair. Nope, wrong keywords on the label. Nope, nope, nope. Now you've also become a picky shopper because you think you're more than you were, but you're still plain old brand on the inside, and so are they. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's how you see it. That's the game. Do you have any yes because in you? Are you a player in the game? What if I told you yes because is a lie straight from the pit of hell? It's a lie that digs deep into your heart and asks you to equate love to status. And the worst part about it, if you play it, you may get others to play it too. The more lonely you become, the more intense the game gets. There are no breaks from the game. It takes all your effort, all your time, and all your soul to play. And if you don't play it, you may feel like an outcast because everyone does it. It's just part of life, and you need to accept it, right? What good is it to gain the world but lose your soul? Mark 8:36. Playing the game is a surefire way to do just that. Do you want a partner who plays the game? Probably not. After reading this far, you've probably added to your list for things I want in a partner someone who doesn't play the game. Great, that's good, but by doing that, you're still in the game. And if you're in the game, how can you throw a pass to someone who's not even playing the game? You can't. As long as you play the game, you will never keep someone in your life who isn't. Every box on that shelf has an inside too. You can't know the inside of a box from the outside. Sooner or later, what's on the inside will be tested. And if it's bad, it's likely to end up in the trash of a home it was never meant to be in. If someone buys Raisin Bran at a fair price, they might appreciate it for what it is if it's honest. If someone buys something at a high price, their expectations are higher, whether or not those expectations are fair. If you want to cover up your heart with a fancy box, can you live up to those expectations or do you lie? If you, like me, want to quit the game entirely, you need to drive out the root, heal the wounds left over, and then walk in honesty, even when honesty costs you your image. Chapter 1: Driving Out the Root. Have you tried to pull a weed out of the ground? You can pull off the sides, yank at the stem, but if the roots remain, it will just grow back. The root of the game runs deep and goes by a few names. Name 1: I'm not worthy of love. Name 2: nothing I ever do is good enough. Name 3: I don't feel seen. Name 4: I feel unwanted. Name 5: I don't belong. Name 6. If I'm not of value to someone, I have no value. Name 7. I'm not enough. As water reflects the face, so one's life reflects the heart. Proverbs 27:19. Water reflects light. You can see your face because the light from your face is reflected back from the water. In that same way, the light reflected from your life will reflect your heart. Who are you? Who do you choose to be in the face of the circumstances you've been given? The path you choose, the people you are neighbors with, do you have the courage to love others when others do not love you? Are you a neighbor to those around you? This parable impacts me greatly. While reading this, think of the light reflected in the life of the man who stopped to help. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. Teacher, he asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? What is written in the law? He replied. How do you read it? He answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. You have answered correctly, Jesus replied. Do this, and you will live. But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? In reply, Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So, too, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? The expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. Jesus told him, go and do likewise. Luke 10:25-37. If the man who helped instead desired to gain the approval of others, how would this story be different? He might have picked the man up and showed him around town while he was injured, careful to make sure he was seen doing this act of kindness. But no, his heart took pity. He stopped and he helped. Period. There was nothing for him to gain. Nothing at all. It was an act born from a place of pity. The wounded man could have been a robber, yet he was carried upon the man's own donkey, which the wounded man could have stolen. The neighborly man was not afraid. He cared. That was the state of his heart Jesus saw, and it was reflected in his life. But what does this have to do with the root of the game? The root of yes, because. It's simple. Actions alone do not determine if something is right, and every action that we perform comes from a place in our heart. Some of those actions may come from wounds. Just like the name of the game, yes, because often comes from a wound. A person may think their own way's right, but the Lord weighs the heart. When you're stuck in the game, the way seems right, but the path ahead is crooked. Your head might say, I want to be a world-famous pianist because I want to play piano. But your heart might say, I need to feel seen and have my worth validated, and piano seems to be the best chance I have to do that. The easy way out is to try to fix the state of your heart by covering it up with actions, good deeds, money, fame, prestige. Usually it's a bit of all of the above, but the root is still there, and you'll travel down a crooked path, bending around one curve to the next without realizing why. There is a verse in the Bible that shows something very moving about this. If I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. 1 Corinthians 13, 1 through 3. If I do not have love, I am nothing. It doesn't matter what I do. It doesn't matter what actions I take. If I volunteer at a soup kitchen, I still could be a jerk. The root of the game has to do with fear. If you want to pull out the root, you must have love. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear. Perfect love will drive out the root of fear. It will drive out the root of yes because. The fear that you're not enough. The fear that you're behind the curve. The fear that you're unworthy of love. The fear that you're unwanted, unseen. That fear that you have to cover up with deeds and things of the world. The fear that you have to be more than you are to be accepted. Perfect love drives out all fear. If you discover perfect love, the root cannot stay. It will be driven out. Sounds pretty good, right? But where can I find perfect love to drive out this root? The answer is simple, yet difficult for most. You find it in following Jesus. What kind of answer is that? That doesn't help. I know. I've been there. I used to be an atheist. I was angry and hurt towards life. But I want to encourage you. Even if you don't believe in God or in Jesus, keep listening and ask yourself how this can apply to your life. When I first came to Jesus, I did so realizing what I'm learning is helping me become a better person. It's better than anything else I've found. I won't regret it if I end up being wrong. Don't misunderstand my heart. I believe in Jesus. I have faith, and I believe in the death and the resurrection. And I believe all people were created for good and not for evil. But I wouldn't regret being wrong, because his words and his teachings have transformed my life and helped me to grow to be a better person. I used to ask myself some pretty tough questions. God is supposed to be omniscient, all-knowing, and all-powerful. With all the evil in the world, cancer, disease, war, sickness, why does God allow it? And if he allows it, what kind of God is he? That's a tough question to swallow, but it's one I asked often, and I have an equally tough answer. Firstly, younger me, all the evil in the world, if you really cared about it, you'd do something about it. So why are you pointing the finger up there? Second, Jesus died for the world. Is that not enough? God came to the world in the form of a man and was crucified, whipped, persecuted, and humiliated. And in the middle of what we did to him, he said, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. Jesus died to bring sinners home, to offer a way after this life. How do you know God hasn't already done something about it? You might say, because cancer exists. That was definitely my reply. But still, how do you know he hasn't already done something about it? Really and truly, it's hard. I will acknowledge it's hard. It was hard for me. I was angry, I was upset, and I felt great pain at the idea of existing. Accepting any words of wisdom from the idea of Christianity was hard for me because of the image I had about Christianity. That was until I heard and read the words of Jesus for myself. As hard as it was to let go, I knew more than anything I wanted out. I wanted out of the game, and everywhere I turned, the door was locked. As I mentioned before, when I first came to Jesus, there was a period of time where I felt, okay, even if none of this turns out to be real, if I pass away and that's it, I won't regret it. I won't regret following Jesus, because his teachings are better than anything else I've heard. That's where I was. That's where I stood, a depressed young man, trapped in the game, defeated and searching for a door. Jesus started out as a new door. I acknowledge that. But for once in my life, I found the right door. It was the best decision I have ever made. What if you're far from God, far from love, and stuck in the game? Like me, stuck in the fear I wasn't enough and looking to validate myself through deeds. Maybe you're not a believer at all. How do I know God's real? How do I know all this Jesus stuff is true? And how do I know any of these verses are at all applicable to real life? Test them in your heart and see how they apply. All I had to go off of was this image of Christianity as judgmental and hateful. I didn't think I saw much truth in people who claimed to be godly. So for a long time in my life, I believed, we're all here to suffer and die. Life is what you make of it. It was a pretty bleak outlook, and it led to major depression in my life. One day, I finally broke down and just gave my friend's church a try. I got pretty dang lucky and found a good one. I heard these words: God is love. That thing I was holding on to all my life was love, even as an atheist, even lost in the dark pit of despair, suffering from depression and suicidal ideation. I tried everything I could to fill that emptiness inside. I couldn't pull out the root. I feel unwanted. To drive out the root, you need to know true and perfect love. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered, and it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Corinthians 1:13. Whoever lives in love lives in God, and God in them. This is how love is made complete among us. The solution to the root of the game, the root of yes because, is to know true and complete love and live it. To know it not in your head, but in your heart. And if it's in your heart, your life will reflect it, just like your face is reflected off the water. Let love and faithfulness never leave you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Jesus loved people so much he forgave them. He loved them even when the world said they were unlovable and unworthy. In the words of Jesus, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart. You will find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy and my burden is light." You were made to love, in love, with love. It is hardwired into our very being. Do you want to know why playing the game is so painful? Do you want to know why living a life of yes because hurts so deeply? It's because you were made for something so much better. Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. When your heart is overfull with love, the outside of your cup will become clean because the inside is overflowing with good things. Your heart is not worried about what people think of you. Your heart is not trying to fill itself. You're not plotting, waiting, thinking. Your heart moves before your feet can follow. When the Lord saw her, his heart went out to her, and he said, don't cry. Luke 7:11-13. Does compassion move your heart before your feet catch up? Are love and faithfulness written on the tablet of your heart? Do you know complete love? Love that's patient and kind. Do you live it, breathe it? Is your cup overflowing with it? No one ever gets it perfect, but we can all do our best to grow in these areas. Do you see love in the world around you? The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light that is within you is darkness, how great that darkness is. What is Jesus saying here? He is saying that your perspective is incredibly important. If you're looking around you and you only see darkness, your whole body will be full of darkness. For me, that came in the form of depression. I looked around and all I could see was the terrible things. Trauma, abuse, pain, greed. All I could see in the world was bad, and my heart was full of weight. The heart is part of your body, your spiritual body and your physical one. If you want your heart to be overflowing with love, then you need to let some light in. Notice Jesus doesn't say the eyes only let in light. That would be toxic positivity. He says if the eyes are healthy, if your perspective is healthy, he is saying make sure that the perspective you think is good is not actually bad. That business, that acting career, that video game, that artistic skill, that musical talent, that voice, or the money you've accumulated, the people you know, the status you hold, none of these things, none of them are light. None of them are love. You could gain them all, sit atop the world with hordes of people giving you all the admiration you ever wished, yet lose your soul. You do not have to be more than you are to be accepted. When the teachers of the law, who were Pharisees, saw him eating with sinners and tax collectors, they asked his disciples, "Why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners?" On hearing this, Jesus said to them, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners." You do not need to cover up with deeds to be worthy of love. You are not unwanted. Jesus came for the sick and the broken. He came for all people. He wants your mess, your brokenness, your hurt, your weariness. Even if all the world turns its back on you, Jesus won't. He suffered it all, and he understands what it's like. You're not unworthy of love. Neither height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord. Romans 8:39. We love because he first loved us. Love is the healer of your heart. It will drive away the game, and it's the key to the door out of that shopping center. It's the light that drives away the root of yes because. You are worthy of love, and so are others. Chapter 2. Honesty. Do you want to stop playing the game? Really and truly? Do you want to drive out the root of yes because? To drive out the root, you have the answer: living a life full of love and knowing that you are loved. But as the age-old adage goes, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. You don't need to convince your head. You need to convince your heart and your soul. Here is what mine sounded like even when I knew in my head I wanted to quit. But not playing the game seems impossible. It seems like everyone's doing it. I've tried to live differently, but it hurts. It hurts so much. It's miserably painful. I'll be rejected. I'll be a nobody. I'll have to be vulnerable with others, and I know there are few people I can truly trust with that vulnerability. It's hard. Why should I quit? I don't see any other way to live than this. This book is not meant to be a hasty shortcut. The road out of the game is hard. It's not easy. In your journey out of the game, expect things in your life to leave, things you may hold on to, desire, and want. It's hard. I acknowledge it's hard. It's been hard for me. I've given up so much, passed by so much, lost so much, and I still have such a long journey ahead of me. Living outside that shopping center can be a very lonely thing. In one parable, Jesus describes the path to life as two gates. Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. The game is popular because it's easy, it works, and it often gets you what you want. The other path, there's dirt, there's bugs. Few people will follow you through it. And what's more challenging than any of that? It's often a lonely path. Listen to the words. Only a few find it. That's the hardest part of this journey. Fighting loneliness, losing friends, losing approval, losing position, money, fame. When you choose to quit the game, understand you are choosing a less traveled road. I can't tell you life will be easier because it's not. Not in the short term, at least. But if you quit the game, you may face rejection. You may face loneliness. You may give things up and receive nothing in return. Is it all worth it? Yes. Let me tell you so much that it is. From the bottom of my heart, yes. In all the struggle and all the pain and all the letdowns and the rejections, the loneliness and the loss, from every time I've cried myself to sleep in my room, I can look myself in the mirror and say, I recognize this man. Where does that wide road lead? Who do you want to be? Do you want to be a person of integrity and honesty? Someone who is open with the truth, even when it costs you your image, even when it costs you the approval of others, even when it costs you status and position in society, even when it hurts. Because if you do, don't expect an easy road. But I do hope that through the hardest times, you will hold on to your hope. Because the narrow road, even though it may be lonely at times, leads to something so much better. It leads to life, and the path that is walked with was faith, love, and hope. If you're still reading this far, you're likely willing to put down the game. If you're sold out on quitting the game, if you, like me, feel the game is abhorrent to my soul, I need to get out, the next step is healing. When you drive out the root, Your heart will still need healing. Where do we seek healing for such a thing? Honesty. We seek healing through broken, tough, vulnerable honesty. Therefore, confess your sins to each other and pray for each other, so that you may be healed. When was the last time you went all the way with someone, really broke down and let out everything you're holding in? Think of the worst things you've done in your life, the worst mistakes you've made, your biggest regrets and sources of guilt. Have you talked to someone about it? Honesty is counter to the game. Here's why. It's hard. The game thrives on lies, but love rejoices with the truth. That is a tough thing to swallow, because when you're open and vulnerable with others, you'll quickly discover who you can trust and who you can't. Not everyone will rejoice when you are honest with them. Some may even hate you for it. You may lose friends, and they may even be justified to walk away. You may tarnish your image. You may lose respect from others because you aren't perfect. I'm not perfect. No human being is. I've lost friends. I've fallen short of the mark many times. It's part of being human. But I'd rather lose a friend who wouldn't stay if I'm authentic than keep a friend who loves me for an image I present. Are you willing to take that risk? In the words of a good friend of mine, we all got our stuff and some of it stank. What unresolved emotional issues have you got buried down that you feel other people might not want to hear? In the words of Craig Rochelle, if you want to know whether or not someone is trustworthy, the easiest way to find out is to trust them. When you mess up, do you fess up? If I must boast, I will boast of the things that show my weakness. This is one of my favorite verses. Instead of boasting about the things that make us grand, have you ever thought about boasting about the things that make you seem weak? Honesty, integrity, humility, accountability, these are all powerful words. Put them together and they stand for something. Yet they stand paired hand in hand with weakness and vulnerability. Without love, what are those words? Empty. When you confess to others, don't just keep up the image of confessing. Don't just walk through the motions. Be truthful with it. Take risks. At the end of the day, what's more important to you? Your image or your growth? I have found so many weights lifted off my life from confession. I tried to do it alone. One of the worst parts about loneliness, you get used to it. It doesn't always feel natural to be vulnerable, to confess and ask for healing and help, to trust others with our weakness, to admit we have a problem or an area in which we can grow. It doesn't come easy either, especially if you're used to going it alone. One day, I was with a friend of mine in the car. I was exhausted, tired. I felt like I was stretched so thin, as if deep down in my chest, my heart itself was too tired to beat. I felt immense pain. I was too exhausted to even talk about it. The kind of pain that cannot speak. I was turning into stone, distant from the moment and waiting for time to pass. My friend sensed something was wrong, and he started to ask questions. Most friends, you would expect, when they see you sad, to say, "I'm so sorry, what's wrong? How can I help?" I didn't get any of that from him. He argued with me. He started going at me while I was driving. The conversation started off about prayer. He asked me what I was praying for, believing him. I told him, "I just pray for God's will." This upset him, and he told me, "You have not because you ask not. God loves you. He wants to bless you. Ask him. He gives us the desires of our hearts for a reason." Something in me broke right there. I saw it for the first time spoken in my own words when I replied, "I'm too exhausted to pray for anything. I'm too exhausted to fight. I'm too tired to ask." Something broke in me in that moment when I heard those words come out of my own mouth. I didn't realize the burden I was carrying. I stopped turning to stone and my shell cracked. After our short disagreement, he said in essence, "I'm telling you this because I care. I can't stand to see you this way." My friend, he saw something was wrong. He got a pickaxe and he told me what I needed but didn't want to hear. He broke through the stone around my heart. At that moment, I realized God designed for us to be in community. I wasn't made to carry these burdens alone. A great deal of the reason I struggled so greatly was because I was trying my hardest to live a life alone, even when being surrounded by others. Remember how the road to life is narrow and few travel it? If you find someone traveling that same road, will you not want to travel with them that much more through the entire journey? Is that not safer? When you're walking a widely traveled road, you will pass by a lot of people. A lot of people will pass by you. But when you're walking a road few find, the people who find one another are much more likely to travel together. The wide road is where you go to find many friends. The narrow road is where you go to find true friends. Do you think you're meant to carry your burdens alone? If you do, that's a lie you can release yourself from. You are not meant to carry your burdens alone, and you don't have to. Picture a great boulder which sits upon a hill. The rock looks out to the sun surrounded by a field of flowers. If this rock could speak, what do you think it might say? I imagine sitting down next to this boulder. I look at it and it says to me, "The view is nice, but I can't move. I feel so lonely on this hill. Even though it's pretty, I cannot leave it. I have no one to truly talk to. Most of y'all pass me by, always in a hurry. No one stops to listen." Do you continue to listen to this boulder, or will you get up and walk on by? Some of us have hearts which have grown so hard and set in stone we become like this boulder. We're petrified, trapped on a hill. People pass by you, but your voice, it just won't come out. In this story, it's a miracle the boulder could speak. It's unnatural and it doesn't happen normally. No one goes up and talks to a boulder. Why? Because it's a boulder. Boulders don't usually talk to you, so you don't expect it. You may feel like this boulder, others may see you as a rock, but you're not. You're not a boulder, you're a human being, and you are not made to carry your burdens alone. Chapter 3: Seeking Love in All the Wrong Places. Take a moment and think on these two questions. 1. Where have you received love in your life? 2. What do other people seem to like about you? A trickle of water erodes the dirt and soil. With time, it can become a stream, and with even more time, that stream can become a river. Approval in your life can be like that. But approval is not always a good thing. A stream in the wrong place can lead to a raging and dangerous rapid that divides important places in your heart. If people tell me, "Wow, you're so talented, you're so good at blank," where blank is something you do that others seem to like, over time and with enough praise, you may start to expect to receive love through the object of that praise. You may begin to believe the source of your worth is how well you perform that object of praise. There is an interesting verse in Proverbs I'd like to share. To flatter friends is to lay a trap for their feet. Most people love compliments. They love feeling special and valued. When I think of flattery, I think of someone who gives a compliment to get something in return. They offer something they believe to be of value. In this case, that value is to your sense of validation. This verse says that flattery is actually a trap. That is interesting because it goes so counter to our culture. Getting compliments and adoration seems like it should just be a good thing, right? Well, yes, it can be. Gracious words are a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the body. When you don't believe in yourself, it can help when others believe in you. But also, compliments given from the wrong place can be destructive and harmful. How can this be? Well, here's an example. A man likes a woman, and so he flatters her appearance constantly on social media. He tells her she looks beautiful, and in almost every picture of her he can find, he repeats the sentiment. In his mind, he thinks it makes me happy when people tell me I'm attractive and fit, so I will tell her she is attractive and fit. I think she's attractive, and I want her to know that and feel happy. There's nothing necessarily wrong with what the man is thinking. But when you have 5 to 10 men all doing the same thing, first it becomes overwhelming, and second, it may cause her to question what men value about her. If all he's commenting on is her appearance, that may cause her to feel her appearance is what men value. If enough people give that same flattery, she may even believe that her appearance is what makes her valuable to others. And that's a very dangerous lie to believe about oneself. In a relationship, it can create a cycle of trying harder and harder to please others through her appearance and losing more and more of herself in the process. Or it can create resentment and bitterness. Often the two go hand in hand. The same can be applied to art, or music, or money, or career. What lengths will you go to in order to please others? Sometimes we mistakenly think the reason we receive love is because of what makes us special. So we'll try harder and harder to do more or be more of blank to receive that love. Your value doesn't come from what you can give. It doesn't come from what you do. It doesn't come from your appearance or how pretty or handsome you are. It doesn't come from how smart you are or how charming and confident you act. how well you speak, or how often you can make people laugh. It doesn't come from how well you lead or what authority you carry. It doesn't come from how much you give to charity or how many verses you know or how talented an artist you might be or how well you perform. It doesn't come from what you do. Love is not made by status. Do you have flattery coming in from a murky place? Do you have attention and adoration knocking on the door of your heart, which asks for something in return? Look at your feet and be careful where you step. What are you doing in response to that water coming in? If you're trying that much harder to prove yourself in order to please that flattery, you're digging a deeper trench. Ask yourself, do you want a river there? If you don't, walk it back. Get your foot out of the trap and examine why you're doing what you're doing before you do it. I'm just going to say it blunt. Be careful that the flattery of others isn't making you a worse person. Be on guard against pride. Insecurity and fear of not belonging can make us do things we'll later regret. If you feel any anxiety that you're not enough, that you won't be enough without doing blank, release that from your heart. Cast all your anxieties on him because he cares for you. 1 Peter 5 through 7. I've struggled with anxiety all my life. One night, I sat down and started writing out a few things I was anxious about. Then I kept writing, and I kept writing. Lord, I cast to you the fear that I'm not enough. Lord, I cast my fear that I can't measure up to the expectations of others. Lord, I cast my fear I need to perform well and can't. Lord, I cast my fear I'm behind where I could be. I continued for about 5 pages and felt something lift off of me. Some of the things I wrote down I never had any idea I was carrying until I saw it written on paper, and I felt lighter. But I didn't have to just do it once. I have to do it continually whenever the anxiety arises. Performance anxiety hits me often when I try to do anything art related. It can be nerve-wracking, especially when the world says so much is on the line to perform well. When I was younger, I was looking for love in the place of art and performance. In my quest to gain approval, something developed in my heart that made me a worse person. I became simultaneously prideful and more insecure at the same time, and I didn't recognize myself in the mirror. I began to believe my value came from my art. I wanted to feel seen, recognized, and appreciated, but I tried to become someone I wasn't to get it. I know now as I'm older, my value doesn't come from my performance. Whether I perform well or perform poorly, I'm still me. Don't be mistaken that your value comes from your performance, your appearance, your intelligence. It doesn't, it can't, and it never will. A healthy body of water isn't stagnant. The water flows in and it flows out. If you try to drink stagnant water, you will likely get sick. If you try to drink from a pool of flattery, you will feel nauseous and may have to vomit out that attention you received later. So don't let your heart be stagnant and stuck on what others say about you being your source of validation. Be careful where you search for love. You will not find it in flattery. You will not find it in fame or money or position or appearance. You may find lots of attention and adoration, but that kind of attention, if your heart is unguarded, is not good for you. Wealth makes many friends, but the poor is separated from his friend. I found this interpretation of Proverbs 19:4 in a study guide. Wealth makes many friends. When a person is wealthy, it draws many people to them in friendship. Yet these friendships may not be sincere or meaningful. The poor is separated from his friend. The wealthy man has advantages and draws many friends, but the poor man does not have these advantages. Their would-be friends find it easy to separate from them. What does this have to do with seeking love in all the wrong places? Well, just as wealth draws in friends, your appearance, your position, your outward traits may draw in would-be friends. It may draw in attention and flattery, and that might sate a desire to feel wanted. But just like drinking from stagnant water, eventually it will make you sick. If you were never a rock star, much of the crowd would leave. The crowd isn't what is good for you. The crowd isn't what you needed in the first place. The crowd can't heal you or bring you peace. The crowd won't fill your cup. If you don't believe me, just look at all the countless rock stars who struggled with drugs and depression. Ask yourself again, are you seeking love in the wrong places? What is the heart behind what you do and why you do what you do? I have to ask myself these questions often. Even in the writing of this book, I am on guard against bad intents within my why. Am I writing a book because I want to help people? Or am I writing this book because I want to be seen and recognized? My head can say, oh, yes, I'm doing this for others. But what does my heart say? What does my heart say deep down? What's the honest truth? These are the questions we need to ask ourselves. What books in your life are you writing? What is your heart hoping will happen in the finishing of that book? What does your heart say deep down? What's the honest truth? Why is this important if you want to quit the game? I'll answer this in the form of a question. You can know the love of Jesus. You can live it. You can find freedom and healing in confession and honesty. But how many times do you want to walk through the same journey? Learning the language of your heart and knowing it can help protect you from planting new seeds of unworthiness. Chapter 4. Keeping Ground. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Proverbs 4:23. What does it mean to guard something? A guard protects. A guard makes sure that nothing bad is going on in the position they're assigned to guard. What position are we being assigned to guard? Our hearts. The place from which everything we do flows. What a powerful word. Everything you do flows from the heart. Have you ever heard these words in your life? Your heart is worth protecting. Love always protects. The root of unworthiness, the root of feeling unwanted and like you don't belong, it can be like a wound. Wounds hurt. They sting. They cause us to live life differently. Some wounds are caused by others, some are caused by circumstance, and some are caused by our own mistakes. Often it can be a combination of all three, but know this: wounds can heal. And your heart? It's worth protecting. Notice the verse didn't say, guard your heart if it hasn't been wounded, or guard your heart if it's worth something. No, the verse just says, guard your heart. Your heart is worth protecting. Some people look at themselves as spoiled goods. Well, the damage is already done. Why should I protect myself? Throw me to the wolves because there's nothing left to protect. That's not what God says about you. Let me ask you this. Would you blame a baby for being born in a hurricane? Of course not. It's not the baby's fault. It happened to be born in a hurricane. So why would you blame yourself? Where is your compassion for the wonderful life God created? Why am I saying these things? Because a guard does a much better job when they believe they're guarding something that's worthy of being protected. I want to share something that changed my life. It's a very simple exercise, but this helped me so much. The next time you start to feel down on yourself, repeat this sentence, only replace the name John with your own name. What right do you have to talk to John like that? Jesus died for him. He is loved. What right do you have to look down on John? What right do you have to judge John and shame him? What right do you have to hurt him? Sometimes you have to guard your heart even from yourself. In my life, I have often had to protect myself from myself. In my youth, I didn't believe I had a heart worth protecting. Why? I was lost in the game. If I didn't believe I was worthy of love, I certainly did not believe my heart was worth protecting. Have you ever heard the verse about the armor of God? Listen to this and think about protection and defense. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore, put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground, and after having done everything to stand, stand firm then, with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. In addition to all this, take up the shield of faith, from which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God, and pray in the Spirit on all occasions and with all kinds of prayers and requests. With this in mind, be alert, and always keep on praying for the Lord's people. Ephesians 6:10 through 18. Most of these items are defensive. There is only one truly offensive piece of equipment. Most of these pieces are used to remain steadfast in the face of adversity. The breastplate and the shield protect your heart. Living rightly and having faith protects your heart from harm. Walking with grace keeps you on the right path. Living in truth keeps those protections in place. You may get cuts and bruises, but your vitals are kept safe. Why do I share this? I am emphasizing the importance of protecting your heart, which is also to say, the part of you from which everything you do flows. A good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. Luke 6:45. Everything you do comes from what is inside of you. We don't live from the outside in, we live from the inside out. This brings more light to what Jesus says. Clean the inside of your cup, and the outside will become clean. If you clean the inside of your cup, your actions will clean the outside by themselves. So why worry about the outside? If your heart is in a good place, what you do will flow from a good place. And just like light reflects your face off the water, your image will reflect your heart. All of this to say, you don't have to worry about the outside of your cup. It'll take care of itself. But even if you start cleaning the inside of your cup, your hands can switch to cleaning the outside at any time. Someone might say, you should clean the outside, it looks dirty. And without thinking, you may change what you're doing, you may stop confessing, turn away from honesty and accountability in your life, and go back to covering up your insecurity with deeds and things of the world. If you don't guard your heart, you can lose focus. You might listen to the wrong advice and go back to everything you wanted to change. You might go back to seeking love in all the wrong places. When does one reach life in the parable Jesus gave about the two roads? In order to reach life, you must finish the journey by traveling it to the destination. To finish the journey, you have to be resolute in the finishing of that journey. If you start the journey but never finish it and turn back, then you won't reach the destination. Many people may attempt to talk you out of it, but there's an easier path. Look at the dirt on the outside of your cup. It's tempting. But where do the two roads lead? Are you resolute in your decision? Do you guard the place everything you do flows from? Do you guard your heart? I'll say it again because I think a lot of people in the world really need to hear this in this day and age. No matter what you think of yourself, no matter what other people have said about you, no matter what harm has been spoken over you or done to you, your heart is worth protecting. So protect it well because your heart deserves to be protected. Chapter 5. Finding Your Why. We've walked through seeing the game for what it is, knowing love, walking in honesty, finding freedom, and guarding our heart to protect the freedom we've found. What's the next step? It's time to find the right heart motivations. For it is by grace you have been saved, through faith, and this is not from yourselves, it is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do. Ephesians 2:8-10. This verse is really interesting. It states, we are not saved by our works, yet we were created to do good works. What kind of relationship does this suggest we should have to the things we do? For starters, it says we shouldn't use it to boast. It is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. Second, it states that we are created with good purposes, which God knew in advance. I think many people really need to hear this. You were made for good things. It's on the inside of you, in the fiber of your being. God created you to do good. Your purpose is to do good. No matter what anyone else has spoken over you in your life, your purpose is to do good. You were made for good and not for evil. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. Psalms 139:14. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. You were made for good things. What does good look like? The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Galatians 5:22-23. Remember the armor of God? The one offensive weapon we had was the Spirit. What is the purpose of an offensive weapon? To protect those we love, to take ground, and to forge a path so we aren't relegated to only defending. Did you ever consider that kindness can take ground? Love can take ground? Peace and joy can take ground? Did you ever consider that peace is an effective form of protection? Let's go back to the parable Jesus gave with the man who was beaten by robbers and shown mercy. Be a good neighbor. Who are we neighbors to? Everyone. You're called to be a neighbor to them. Now go and do likewise. What does a helping neighbor look like? Help looks like love. Help looks like kindness, like patience, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, joy, peace, and self control. Could you imagine if everyone in the world was living out of the fruit of the Spirit? There'd be no war, no oppression, no hatred, no bigotry or division. There'd be no abuse, no human trafficking, no rape or murder. Looking out at the world can be a stark thing. There's no shortage of problems and things that are wrong. Being just one person can feel like being a drop in the ocean. How can I possibly change what I see? A drop isn't such a bad thing. A single drop in a pond can ripple across the entire body of water. Your fully realized purpose will change a lot more than you might expect. Just to clarify, you're much more than a drop in a pond. Truly, I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, "Move from here to there," and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. Matthew 17:20. I believe Jesus was speaking in a metaphor in this verse. The challenges that seem like mountains to you, those impossible situations in life where it seems like there is no way, if you have faith and believe, it is possible to overcome them. Don't give up. You can change the world. What do you feel called to do in life? Do you want to be a musician, a builder, an artist, a performer? Maybe you just have some loose ideas and you're still figuring it out. If you know what you want to do right now, ask yourself this and get real with it. Why do you want to do what you do? I wanted to be an artist. Why did I want to be an artist? Here's what my head would say. Because I love art and making things. But here's what my heart would have said. I want to be seen and recognized. I want to feel validated. I want to become famous and successful. My motivation, my why was way off. I was playing the game, trying to use my talent and position to gain approval. Examine your why for your dreams and listen to what your heart says. What if I don't know what I want to do? Are you looking at positions and job titles? Or are you searching for your heart's calling? Pray about it and ask. When I think of calling, I believe professions are just avenues to do something much deeper in the heart. I love writing and all forms of art because I could never express myself when I was younger. I was as bottled up as they come. My heart was held behind the heaviest of iron bars. I wanted to share the keys I found to freedom with others. There are many avenues to do that. I could work to become an actor or a performer or a public speaker, a radio talk show host. Who knows what the possibilities are? But the point of this is to say, if you look around and feel overwhelmed with choice and don't know where to go, just pick something. There may be multiple right answers to the same calling. But again, make sure you're following your dreams out of a good place in the heart. If you're living out of a wound that makes you feel like you can't measure up or feel like you're not enough, what you do will flow from that wound. If you work hard enough, you may succeed and get what you want, but it may cause harm to you or others. So it's important to examine the motives of your heart, not your head answer, but your heart answer deep down. Likely, you will discover some things that surprise you, and your perspective will shift. Why is this important? I want you to again focus on your heart's why, before we continue to talk about your heart's calling. There are many ways you can answer the same calling. I want to help abuse victims. Do you want to build an organization, provide housing, become a counselor, run a food pantry? I want to help fatherless children. Do you want to create a charity that's ground level and really helps with day-to-day needs? Do you want to become a therapist or guidance counselor who really cares? I want to be a role model athlete who came from nowhere to show anyone, no matter where you're from, you can make it. What sport do you want to play? There are many ways you can follow a calling. Whatever mountains you are looking at, pick one and do your best to climb it. But always examine your heart motivation and make sure you're not living your dream out of a place of hurt or pain. But also remember, just as there are heart motivations which come from a place of hurt, there are also heart motivations which come from a place of love and goodness. Find the light in your purpose. The man who stopped to help the wounded victim on the side of the road had the resources to help. He had a position in life which provided his calling with what he needed in that moment to help. He had a donkey, which was a very expensive thing to have back then. He had the money to pay for the man's wounds, he had wine and oil to pour on the wound, and he had the supplies to help. His heart posture was in a humble place. Like the man helping that individual on the side of the road, your why is important, but so too is your calling. The game is played on a field of status, equating to worth. A humble heart lives out its calling purely from a place of goodness. Remember, calling is a matter of the heart, not the position, for everything you do flows from it. It doesn't flow from you being a doctor. It doesn't flow from you being a psychiatrist or a plumber or a clerk. There are many ways the man could have helped. It could have been as simple as sitting with the wounded man and keeping him company. One day, a family was out front my street. A pregnant woman was selling roses for money. She appeared homeless and stood alone in busy traffic. I thought to myself, I can't do anything to help. I don't have the money or the resources. There's so many people who are hurting, and I can't give them housing. And I regret to say, I drove by. I drove by because I was scared I couldn't fix the amount of problems she was facing. On the way past, something came over me. Something gripped me. You may not be able to fix everything, but what can you do? I went to a grocery store and grabbed what I could and turned my car around. I say this not to boast. I passed by a pregnant woman on the side of the road who couldn't speak English and sold flowers to keep a roof over her family's head while facing an impending eviction out onto the street. She was faced with the possibility of giving birth without medical insurance on a street corner. If I must boast, I will boast of the things that show my weakness. 2 Corinthians 11:30. I share this to share something important I learned. Looking at the world, what do you pass by because you don't think you have the resources to help? Stop and think, what can I do? What is in my power to change? Odds are your calling may be connected to much of the pain you've seen in the world, to bring joy and hope to joyless, hopeless places. After reading this far, ask yourself truly, what is my purpose? If you need to spend a week or even a month on this question, do so. Know that for every season of life, our calling might pull us different directions. As you think of your calling in this season, remember during this time to know love, be open and honest, and guard your heart. If you want to quit the game, just not participating is not enough. You could be doing something so much greater with your time. Not playing the game doesn't mean hiding away and doing nothing. Listen to this parable Jesus gave. Again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. To one he gave 5 bags of gold, and to another 2 bags, and to another 1 bag, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. The man who had received 5 bags of gold went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 bags more. So also the one with 2 bags of gold gained 2 more. But the man who had received 1 bag went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I have gained 5 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. The man with 2 bags of gold also came. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 2 bags of gold. See, I have gained 2 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness. Then the man who had received 1 bag of gold came. Master, he said, I knew that you are a hard man, harvesting where you had not sown and gathering where you had not gathered seed. So I was afraid and went out and hid your gold in the ground. See, here is what belongs to you. His master replied, you wicked, lazy servant. So you knew that I harvest where I have not sown and gather where I have not scattered seed. Well then, you should have put my money on deposit with the bankers, so that when I return, I would have received it back with interest. Matthew 25:14. Listen to those words. I was afraid and went out and hid your gold in the ground. Some of y'all got gold deposits you're hiding in the soil. Some of y'all got talents, gifts, and goodness you're hiding away because you're afraid. Merely quitting the game isn't enough. Do you know how you can tell if someone is living out of the game? Their life will reflect it. Look what the man did out of fear. He was trusted with something precious and he buried it. He hid it in the ground. Why? Because he was afraid of failure. Do you know what's the same as burying your talents in the ground? Staying in a dead-end job that pays the bills because it's convenient? Using your gifts to live a comfy, lavish life rather than stepping out, using them to change the world? Never trying to pursue your dream because you're scared of it not working out. Taking the easy way out and hiding who you are meant to be is not evidence of someone whose inner heart is secure. When love is written on the tablet of your heart, you won't be able to ignore your calling because the needs of the world will drive you in the right direction. What do you have to lose by trying and failing? If you don't try, you can't succeed. What does all of this have to do with the game of yes because? Remember how I said our hearts stand at a fork in the road, give up on love, or change to become worthy of it? Remember how I said often we switch between both roads? Both of these roads are one and the same, and they're part of the same wide road. When quitting the game gets tough, you may want to give up. Some of y'all need to find your inner fire and make some changes and fight for a better future. I've heard so many people complaining all my life. Everyone complaining about each other, pointing the finger, and blaming their problems on other people. Stop the blame game. Pick up your bundle of logs and build a fire. There's a long journey ahead. Did you know there's such a thing as purposely failing the game? If you're purposely failing the game, you're still playing. Let me share a story with you. One day, my mother was concerned about me not seeming to understand my way around the dating world, specifically how to attract a partner. Sometimes when you're struggling, even your family and friends will say, "Well, have you tried moving your knight to f6 and playing centerboard?" When I was lost in the wilderness of singleness, my mother gave me a book titled How to Get Women. Then she had my cousin, who was a bit of a player, give me advice on the topic. The advice was pretty much as follows. 1. Never text them more than they text you. Text short. 2. Be confident. Fake it if you don't have it. 3. Never reply quickly. Try to reply slower than they reply to you. 4. Don't share personal crap. Be easygoing. 5. Flirt constantly and be funny. I go out of my way to do the opposite of each of these things. Call me rebellious. Something in my soul absolutely abhors the idea. I hate it. So much, I sometimes take it to the opposite extreme. I go out of my way to write long texts. I hate faking confidence, and am very open when I feel anxious or nervous. I always try to reply quickly and faster than they reply to me. I share personal struggles and try to be an open book, and I'm not always easygoing. I boast of my weaknesses, my anxieties, and my faults. I hardly ever flirt, and if I do now, I pray for forgiveness. I have pushed away so many people doing this. Has it changed me? No. Why? Because I'm stubbornly me. I refuse to follow their advice. Has it hurt? Absolutely. Have I been tempted or even partially gone back on my resolve? Yes. But let me tell you how much pressure I've faced to bend and break on this area in my life. I refused. I thought, I'll die alone before I change this aspect of who I am. But there's another side to this issue. Have you ever had a dog that tries to play keep away? It's exhausting, isn't it? Well, that was me. I tried to play keep away. It was a defensive strategy. If someone actually loves you, they'll chase after you, right? And if they don't, well, they don't. In my attempt to deliberately fail, I realize I'm going out of my way to test people and drive them away because I don't trust them. I'll know pretty early on if someone's in the game like I was, usually because I go out of my way to get myself kicked to the curb. Remember how I said you can't keep someone in your life who isn't playing the game? Well, I say that from experience. I try to keep people in life both by purposely failing at the game and by succeeding at it. Telling yourself, I deserve love because I don't play the game, is still within the rules of yes because. So is keep away. I thought to myself, if I dressed up, if I worked out, showed my position, showed all the gifts I thought I have, and acted with confidence, I'd be a manipulative jerk luring people in. So I dressed down, wore the ugliest shirts I had in my closet. I didn't work out. I let my hair grow out because I knew most women didn't find longer hair attractive. I hid my position in life. I mostly hid any gifts I had, and I acted as far away from confidence as possible. Why did I do this? Because I want to know if someone's going to love me, that they will love me for me and not have a "you're only worthy of my love because." I also thought if I don't play the game, then maybe I'm more worthy of love. And by extension, I will only love someone if they prove they're not a player in the game. But that mindset is still well and truly within the game's bounds. If your heart believes, I'm worthy of love because I don't play games, then you're no better off than before. One day, my friend noticed this and he asked a simple question. Are you overdoing it by trying to rebel? It's the first time I ever really considered that. Truth be told, I knew I was. I could feel it in my heart, this anger and hurt and pain and frustration. Somewhere deep inside, my heart was saying, people want me to be someone I'm not? To fill their own empty cup? They don't accept me for who I am. Why should I accept them for who they are? I'm certainly not going to give them what they want. My heart was angry and hurt, rebellious and stubborn. Yet for all those upset feelings, I'd switch roads. One day I'd try to succeed at the game. The next I'd try to fail it. Why am I sharing this? Because if you want to quit the game, you'll need to be comfortable with being honest. Have you ever heard of the term lying by omission? Some of y'all lying by omission because you're scared of being attractive to others. You're burying your talents in the ground, burying your kindness, your gifts, going out of your way to do things that drive people away. And for what? You can't blame everyone for everyone else's problems. What do I mean by that? You can't blame every person you know for what feels like is every other stranger's problems. You may want to hide your talents because it feels safer living in the dark. You may even hide your talents as a form of retaliation. I will deny others what makes them happy about me because others have hurt me. I've been there. In the words of my pastor, holding on to unforgiveness is like setting ourselves on fire and expecting the other person to burn. Remember how the root of unforgiveness can be like a wound? If a horse trampled you, in response, should you hate all horses? That's silly, of course not. Yet our hearts may do exactly that to groups of people when it's been hurt. I've seen so many men and women complain about the opposite gender. Stop that. We shouldn't punish people we don't know for the sins of people we once did. Why is this important? Because if you want to be authentically you, you might actually be someone people like. Are you willing to give them that? Are you willing to forgive people for a hurt they didn't even inflict? To give the world your authentic you and step into your calling? Do you know it can take courage to be somebody people like? Why is that? It's easy to feel afraid you can't live up to their expectations. When someone's nice to you, you may feel afraid you can't live up to those nice words. When people compliment me, I often get uncomfortable. I get uncomfortable because I think, man, I don't know what you see, but I don't think I can live up to that all the time. Would you say those same things when I'm tense, stressed, and at my worst? You'd be surprised how many people still would, even if in the past it felt like many didn't. One day, before a big event, I was facing this same issue. I wanted to dress down. Instead, I closed my eyes and started repeating this verse. Do not worry about what you will wear. My hand fell on a suit my mother got for me. I wore it to the event and everyone kept coming up to me and complimenting me. I felt uncomfortable. I felt like I was falling. Sometimes it can take courage to step into a position people like, just as much as it can take courage to step out of a position people like. Why is that? Because if you are you, and people find fault in that, your heart might take a beating. At least if you're playing pretend, you know the wounds aren't really aimed at you. But here's the issue with this. If you're playing pretend, the love that comes your way isn't aimed at you either. Even by the game's own rules, it defeats itself. If you're playing pretend, you can't even receive the love you want in the first place. So be honest. Step into you. Step into the real you. Chapter 6. Preparing for the Journey. Moses was born in a country which enslaved its people for labor. His people were beaten and abused, made to work in the harsh desert sand under blistering heat with little water. He was angry, so angry he even murdered an Egyptian who was beating a Hebrew. In this place of looking out at the world, feeling this anger and hopelessness, God urged him, help them, help your people. The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that land into good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the home of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivitites, and Jebusites. And now the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now go, I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? And God said, I will be with you, and this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain. Exodus 3:9-12. In a horrible situation, Moses found God. and was then asked to do something that seemed impossible. Moses was now facing the journey. He would have to convince his people to leave, then convince the Pharaoh to let them leave. He would then have to lead his people across a harsh desert and settle in occupied land. It would be something impossible without God. Moses could have turned back and played the game. He had a decent standing with the Pharaoh. He could have been an overseer and probably lived a fairly lavish life. He could have used his position and lot in life to live comfortably on the backs of others. By stepping off the field, he would be giving away his position, his comfortable life, and walking towards a future that seemed impossible. This is why many people play the game, even when they know better. Moses made a choice which led him to a new land where his people were no longer trapped in slavery. A good friend of mine once told me, if your dream isn't so big people think it's crazy, then it's not how far God wants to take you. Moses was asked to free his people. He was afraid and unsure and kept asking God, but what if they don't believe in me? He wasn't asked to do it alone. For I will be with you. You aren't being asked to walk across a desert alone. After quitting the game, driving out its route, finding freedom, discovering your purpose, it's time to live out that purpose for the right reasons. By living out your purpose with good intent, you will be making the final decision to quit the game. There is no way around it. The journey ahead isn't easy. Leaving the Pharaoh would be difficult. But which is worse? Being trapped in slavery, beaten and abused, or making the journey across the harsh desert sands and walking away from the world you knew? Looking out at that desert, remember, you're not meant to do life alone. I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. John 16:33. Neither height nor depth nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord. Romans 8:39. There will be trouble and hard times ahead. You may be tempted to walk it all back. You may think of throwing in the towel and going back to your old ways, leaving the narrow path and walking a well-paved road. You may fight loneliness. You may battle despair on your knees at the end of your rope, crying out to the heavens above. But you won't be alone, even when all hope seems lost. At the end of the day, will you regret it? Will you regret looking at yourself in the mirror and being able to say, I see my reflection. I stood for something and I changed the stars. Looking out at the desert ahead, do not be afraid. Put on your armor, hold up the sword of the Spirit, and walk with love, hope, and faith. Let those words be written on the tablet of your heart, which is to be protected and cared for, a heart worth guarding and protecting, for everything you do flows from your heart. If you have the right reasons and your heart is in the right place, good things will come from it. And the best part about it, all the problems you had being in the game, they'll fix themselves for you. But to get to that place, there's still a journey ahead, a path to walk, and you must remain steadfast in your decision, even when it costs you, even when it's inconvenient, even when we must acknowledge our weaknesses and confront our faults. Not everyone will be supportive when you say, I have a drinking problem, I need help. Or, honey, I'm addicted to porn, I want to stop but can't. Or, I think I'm trying to get views because I want validation. Why do I feel this way? Or, I feel ugly and disgusting, I don't feel secure about my body. Please, I don't know how to get help for this. When you live in a land of lies and deceit, when you live in a world of posturing and working to receive love, when that's all you've ever known, it's hard to step into something new. To cross that desert beyond a threshold you've never seen where love is given freely and not earned. But there's a breath of fresh air if you can pull through it. Pulling through it isn't always easy, which is why it's so important you guard your heart and be steadfast. I can honestly say I've spent more days crying in my room alone than I can count. I've turned to the other side of my bed, grasping for air and feeling so alone. I've questioned if life's worth living. I've been on my knees crying out to God, I'm dying. Every day I'm dying, and I feel so alone. Lord, please help me. I've been there. I've seen it. I've felt it. I've lived it. I could have walked another way and lived an easy life in the short term, but I didn't, because I knew the outcome in the long run. I made the wrong decisions so many times before, and it left me with nothing but ash and dust for my efforts. I'd watched too many things turn to ash in my hands, tried too long to do it my own way and gained nothing for it. Why? I can't blame God. I can't blame my mom or dad or anyone who's harmed me, bullied me, or put me down, because my heart was in the wrong place. I chose the lifestyle I lived out of a belief I had to prove myself to be worthy of love. I was playing the game, obsessed with my appearance, believing a lie that I wasn't worthy unless I became someone I wasn't. Why am I sharing these intense personal feelings? I want you to know, even in your hardest times, you are not alone. Don't expect the journey ahead to be easy. People play the games they do because they work in the short term. But those kinds of games don't lead to life. You'll be living life by an entirely different set of rules when you quit. It may be lonely for a while. It may take years before you find your way to the other side, but let me tell you, the other side is so much better. Don't be afraid looking out at that desert. You won't walk it alone. God will always be with you, even when it may feel like He's not. Chapter 7. Crossing the Desert. The thing about living in a cage, it can become comfortable. If you're there long enough, you may ask yourself, what am I without it? You can get lost in despair because the light seems so far away. How many Hebrews do you think stayed in Egypt, afraid to take the risk, comfortable with what they knew, even if what they knew was slavery? This was the Pharaoh's response when Moses and his brother Aaron asked the Pharaoh to let his people go for a 3-day festival to pray and fast to their God. Moses and Aaron, why are you taking the people away from their labor? Get back to your work. Then Pharaoh said, Look, the people of the land are now numerous, and you are stopping them from working. That same day, Pharaoh gave this order to the slave drivers and overseers in charge of the people. You are no longer to supply the people with straw for making bricks. Let them go and gather their own straw, but require them to make the same number of bricks as before. They are lazy. That is why they are crying out, Let us go and sacrifice to our God. Make the work harder for the people so they keep working and pay no attention to the lies. Then the slave drivers and the overseers went out and said to the people, This is what the Pharaoh says. I will not give you any more straw. Go and get your own straw wherever you can find it, but your work will not be reduced at all. So the people scattered all over Egypt to gather stubble to use for straw. The slave drivers kept pressing them, saying, Complete the work required of you for each day, just as when you had straw. And Pharaoh's slave drivers beat the Israelite overseers they had appointed, demanding, Why haven't you met your quota of bricks yesterday or today as before? Then the Israelite overseers went out and appealed to Pharaoh. Why have you treated your servants this way? Your servants are given no straw, yet we are told make bricks. Your servants are being beaten, but the fault is with your own people. Lazy, that is what you are, lazy. That is why you keep saying, Let us go and sacrifice to the Lord. Now get to work. You will not be given any more straw, yet you must produce your full quota of bricks. Exodus 5:13 through 18. Moses returned to the Lord and said, Why, Lord? Why have you brought trouble on this people? Is this why you sent me? Ever since I went to the Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has brought trouble on this people, and you have not rescued your people at all. Exodus 5:22 through 23. After facing trouble, Moses second-guessed his decision. In essence, he said, God, you've called me to do this, but I don't see you showing up. Why did you call me to do this if you're not going to show up? I've seen this a lot in my life. I've been there and done it too. When things aren't working out, sometimes you'll point your ire upwards and outwards and say, Why aren't you showing up? But Moses made it to the other side of that desert, and so did his people. Against all odds, they made it. If you want to accomplish something great in your life, you need to dare to stand up against all odds and dare to believe. Then the Lord said to Moses, Now you will see what I will do to Pharaoh. Because of my mighty hand, he will let them go. Because of my mighty hand, he will drive them out of his country. Exodus 6:1. Moses had no idea what was to come from his obedience. God showed up. First it was little things. Then when those little things didn't work, they became bigger and bigger things the Pharaoh and his slave drivers could not ignore. Therefore, say to the Israelites, I am the Lord, and I will bring you out from under the yoke of the Egyptians. I will free you from being slaves to them, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with mighty acts of judgment. I will take you as my own people, and I will be your God. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God, who brought you out from under the yoke of the Egyptians. and I will bring you to the land I swore with uplifted hand to give to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. I will give it to you as a possession. I am the Lord." Moses reported this to the Israelites, but they did not listen to him because of their discouragement and harsh labor. Exodus 6:6-9. I want to focus on those words, as they are very impactful. But they did not listen to him because of their discouragement. Is there any place in your life you feel trapped? But even if the key was placed in front of you, you would not open the lock because you are discouraged? Are you so beaten down you've lost the will to believe? Is there any place in your heart your hope has been beaten back? Why do people play games with others? Why do people posture and use position and power and appearance and authority to get what they want? Because they lack love deep down. The Pharaoh could say whatever he wanted. After all, he was the Pharaoh. He was glorified and placed on a throne with servants at his beck and call. Everyone called him the Pharaoh and told him he was important. Clearly, he didn't believe he was actually that important, because he felt he had the right to call slaves lazy, even as he sat comfortably on his throne. If you asked his heart, "Are you worthy of love?" he might say, "I deserve love because I am the Pharaoh. I am greater than you, so you would do well to love me." But throw him under the sun? Swap his shoes with a slave, and who is he? Just like everybody else. Suppose the Pharaoh had the same heart and lived a life as a slave instead of a Pharaoh. What would he say if you asked him if he was worthy of love? He might say, "I'm a slave, I'm nothing. I live among rabble and trash." The two are the same person who believes love comes from status. One has a heart with motives brought to light. The other has a heart whose motives are hidden, yet they remain the same person. While the Pharaoh was in power, he believed he was greater than those who weren't. When the Pharaoh was not in power, he might believe he was less than those who were. Why? Because to him, status equated to worth. The Pharaoh was not always a Pharaoh. At some point in his life, he was loyal to the previous Pharaoh. At some point in his life, he bowed before another ruler. And the rulers of Egypt at that time were masters at playing the game. What are some of the moves the Pharaoh played in the game of yes because? 1. He entered a position of authority where he was glorified. 2. He labeled others as beneath himself. 3. He ruled with fear and discouragement to maintain his position. Why did he do this? Likely, it is because it was the world he knew. The Pharaoh was a symptom of a greater problem in the culture of their society, a society which equated status to worth. If enough people weren't playing the game, the Pharaoh could not have ruled the way he ruled. Think of the statues and things they were building. The pharaohs built great monuments and tombs to their own honor. How insecure do you need to be? How deep does the pit of lovelessness need to go that you would force others to labor to build a monument to your image? Yet do we not see that still to this day? How often do we find ourselves building monuments to the image of others, or asking others to build monuments to the image of us? The monuments fade away into ash and dust. Many of them turn out to be tombs, yet we build them on social media, in our jobs, in our status, and ultimately on the landscape of our hearts. And they weigh there like empty stones, accomplishing nothing but gathering dust until we too fade away into that same dust. You cannot hold on to this life. Being remembered is not a good life motivation, nor is being rich or being famous. Are you willing to let go? Are you willing to release the position you hold in the game? Even if you're a pharaoh or could become a pharaoh, are you willing to stop erecting monuments and face the wrath of those who live by the game? Being asked to make bricks without straw, to risk being beaten for standing up and choosing your own life. If you're ready for the journey, it's time. It's time to make a difference. It's time to start living out your calling for the right reasons and not the wrong ones. To dig up any talents you've buried and use them for a good purpose. Chapter 8. The Doing of Things. Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do what I say? As for everyone who comes to me and hears my words and puts them into practice, I will show you what they are like. They are like a man building a house who dug down deep and laid the foundation on the rock. When a flood came, the torrent struck that house but could not shake it, because it was well built. But the one who hears my words and does not put them into practice is like a man who built a house on the ground without a foundation. The moment the torrent struck that house, it collapsed, and its destruction was complete. Luke 6:46 through 49. Compare the work required to make a difference to building a house. Say you want to raise money for poor families struggling to pay rent. How will you obtain that money? You could build a business, start a charity, or fundraiser. What are some things you'll need? For starters, you'll need to become a leader. You need to learn how to handle large amounts of money. You'll need people to help make that vision a reality. You'll need to not just correct, but keep the right heart motivations in that purpose. Asking your heart, why do you want to do this? When built and established, your home will provide shelter for those in need. If it comes from a good heart, it will reflect the truth. If you want to build a home, a shelter, what is Jesus saying? Place your foundation on the solid rock. Dig down deep. Don't take the easy way out. The easy way may be convenient in the short term. But when your resolve is put to the test, will you hold if you are not rooted on a solid foundation? Will your dreams of raising money for poor families hold after many failed attempts, after rejections and resistance and letdowns? Almost no one who has ever accomplished anything great in history has done so without facing failure and rejection. Your works, your dreams, and ultimately your heart must be rooted on a solid foundation. Why your heart? Because that is the place where everything you do flows from. The storms and the floods blast at your heart's motivations. The resistance threatens hope to give way to doubt, love to give way to hate, trust to give way to fear. The foundation is important. Moses easily could have given way to becoming a fearful, doubtful, hateful man in the face of all the resistance and evil he saw. One could argue that is exactly what happened to the Pharaoh, which is why his heart was referred to as hard. God never referred to the Pharaoh as wicked or evil or hateful. Why is that important? Your heart could become like the Pharaoh's if your foundation is not on the rock. What are some important parts of the foundation of Jesus' word? Loving God, loving others, being a good neighbor. If you want to change the world, you will face resistance. If you want to change the way things are, you will face resistance. Whether it's a torrent or flood, a pharaoh or a hurricane, resistance exists in the world. In the world you will have trouble, but take heart. Moses wanted to free slaves. That sounds noble and good, right? You'd expect the Pharaoh and all his people to part way and say, "Oh yes, I see you stand for a good cause. Please, lead them out of here." Instead, he stubbornly tried to hold on to his position and power. He enjoyed people erecting monuments to his own honor, and his hard heart was not willing to set them free. The Pharaoh looked down on them and saw them as lazy people who were his to command. Even though the calling Moses had was good, there was great resistance. So what happened? Moses was obedient to his calling. Every time Moses would come back and say, "Let my people go," the Pharaoh would refuse. Then God would have to make himself known until finally he had no choice but to relent. Building a house is not an easy task. You will face resistance. There's weather to contend with, environment, the slope of the land, layout and detail, and hard back-breaking work. By wisdom a house is built. Through understanding it is established. Proverbs 24:3. Whether you want to be a great performer or artist or leader or entrepreneur, your house must be rooted on a firm foundation. Once you have a house upon a firm foundation, build the rest of it with wisdom. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. Proverbs 1:7. Solomon was a king who had everything a person could want: wealth, fame, power, everything. But he ultimately came to the conclusion life is meaningless without God. He tried everything a man could ever want, yet none of it filled his cup. Solomon had won the game, yet realized he would still lose everything and none of it mattered in the end of his life. He said, "Fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom." Fear, translated in a more modern take, is to say awe and respect of God. The wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. James 3:17. Those are some beautiful words to build a house with. considerate, peace-loving, merciful? Do you want a house that's well built? Build it with wisdom. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. James 1:5. What is there to lose in asking? Give it a try. See what happens. But don't forget to stop and listen. In all the hurry and the movement, scrolling through social media, television, jobs, bills, family, friends, in all the movement, do you stop? Step away from everything and listen. In Kings, the voice of God is described as a gentle whisper. He wasn't in the earthquake or the fire or the noise. It's that small voice, and when it speaks, the wisdom it imparts is pure and good. But if it's that still small voice, is it not implied you'll need to listen well to hear it? After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire, and after the fire came a gentle whisper. 1 Kings 19:12. That gentle whisper, the one that builds love, hope, and faith. Listen for it in your heart. The enemy is loud. Evil in the world is loud. It comes to destroy and hurt others, but that still small voice, it speaks life and it speaks truth. It's not going to condemn you. It's not going to hate you or others. Not everyone will have a burning bush moment like Moses. Moses was one person among many. Why is all of this important to quitting the game? Because quitting doesn't mean becoming a recluse. Moses was a leader. He was well known. He soared to greater heights than he ever could have, living comfortably in the Pharaoh's palace. Likewise, the Pharaoh could have been so much more than he was if he wasn't wasting everyone's time erecting monuments and trying desperately to hold on to his power. If the Pharaoh's heart was in a better place, how different would the story be? The Pharaoh could have been a hero of the people. He could have used his position to do good things, to love people, not status and glory. But he chose to become the Pharaoh he was. He chose to join in on the games people play to get love because his heart was hard. No matter where you are in the game, quitting the game may take you lower in position and status, but make no mistake, it's an upward journey in the long run. This will only be true if your heart's motivation is in a good place. You could still make it your heart's goal to quit the game to become more successful and respected so you have greater status. You could say, I'll help some Hebrews escape, but I'll still enforce the Pharaoh's law and be comfortable in my bed. You're no better off than the Pharaoh if you live this way. The Pharaoh had everything a person could want. But did he seem like a very happy person? Did his actions reflect someone who was truly happy? No. The mouth speaks what the heart is full of. His words were insulting, hateful. He put others down. What was his heart full of? It wasn't joy. It wasn't peace. It wasn't kindness or goodness. His heart was full of status and hate and fear and doubt. His heart was referred to as hard. An ordinary person with a hard heart can do terrible things because their heart is too hardened to feel. They do not know what they do. I'd like to share a story about my father. My father lived a very rough life. He went through some very traumatic things as a young man. He struggled with depression. He struggled with feeling like he wasn't a man. He grew up fighting. He was a hockey player and fought constantly. He would go on to accrue injury after injury. He would win some fights and lose others. But through all of them, he'd sustain injuries. For every injury he sustained, it came from a greater, deeper injury inside. My dad wanted to be a professional in the NHL, and he nearly made it. But just before he was going to go pro, my dad lost his eye from taking a hit to the face with a hockey stick. He got called home, and he had to give up on his dream of being in the NHL. One night, we were sitting on the couch. He told me, "It's like there was some invisible force guiding my life. I was called home to spend time with you. If I had known how many injuries I'd sustain and the price I'd pay when I'm older, I probably wouldn't have played hockey." My father never had a burning bush moment, really. To him, his calling was his family. The last section of Proverbs 24:3 says, "By understanding it is established." To be established means to be final and recognized as a home. My dad recognized his calling and understood it. He was established in his life and in me. I'm a very lucky man to be able to say I had a dad who chose me over himself. It seems these days fewer and fewer people can say the same, and that truth breaks my heart, but I must be thankful for who he is. My dad may not have been a professional hockey player. He may not have been a superstar, but I respect him more for his decisions. As his son, I am lucky to call him my father. In his life, I can see it written on his scars. He's come to understand some things I will not understand until I am older. I can give words to pieces of it, but I will not understand it until I, too, walk through what it means to be a father. Have you ever heard the words, be the change you want to see in the world? Whatever your calling is, don't be afraid to pursue it, but also don't be afraid to understand it. Sometimes understanding a thing can come with many scars, but in the understanding, the house is established. In the understanding of a home you build, that home will become established as a shelter which provides safety and rest, and others will know to go to it if they are in need. Chapter 9. Seen and Fully Known. Sometimes the desire to be seen can be a powerful emotion. Some people who fight to be seen fight because they don't feel seen. I would imagine many of them did not feel seen early on throughout their life. In the wilderness of singleness, there's always that dream, that magical dream that someone just sees you for everything you are. You don't have to approach them or risk rejection, they just show up. Everything you could ever want, and that's that. There's that sense, that expectation that God's just going to drop that person in your life and everything will magically work out. They've got all the right labels you want, the personality, the appearance, the heart, and it all just works out. Sometimes that desire can become a thing of desperation. Something inside our heart just screams, please, see me. I wish someone out there would see me. Its silence echoes back. People are willing to go to great lengths to be seen. Look no farther than the pharaohs and their great monuments. If you go to church, do you raise your hand because you want to be seen worshiping God, or because you do so as a sign of surrender? Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets, as the hypocrites do in synagogues and on the streets, to be honored by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. Do you pray because you want to be seen praying, or because you want to pray? Do you want a fancy car because you want to be seen with a fancy car, or because you actually just love cars? Do you want that dream job because you want to be seen getting that dream job, or because you truly feel called to it? Be careful with your heart's motivations. Being seen is a sneaky yet desperate motivation. I've certainly felt it in my life. During my most vulnerable moments, I had just wished someone would have seen me, shown up and been the answer to my prayers. But it didn't work out that way. At least it didn't seem to. I wanted so badly to be seen, to be heard, to be understood, to be accepted. I think there's something inside all of us that desires that. But let me tell you, I've been there. I've been heard. I've been understood. I've been accepted. And it still wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. Why? Because I needed to feel seen more than I believed I was seen. Do you want to know what I did out of that desire to be seen? I tried to be somebody. I tried to become a talented artist, a great musician, a poet, an author. I played the game, but I couldn't make it. I couldn't cut it. I tried my best. My life reflected my heart, and my heart said, please see me. I couldn't see myself. I couldn't see the light from my own reflection, and my whole body was filled with darkness. The light I thought I had turned out to be a great darkness indeed. I remember in high school I used to cry on my desk. People would always assume I was just sleeping, but deep down I was hoping someone would notice and say, I see you're not okay. I see you. I see you. I hoped my teachers, my family, my friends, I hoped anyone would notice, because I had no voice. I couldn't express myself to others or tell them what was going on. That same thing carried into my adulthood. It carried into my work. It carried into my dreams and my hopes and my aspirations and even to vanity. I wanted so badly to be seen. Half of me wished I could just be someone else. Is there someone else in your life? Anyone who's seen you? Who believed in you when you didn't believe in yourself? Was it enough? I hope it was. There is so much expectation of love today. People want someone who checks off all of their boxes. They want pretty, handsome, smart, wealthy, famous, assertive, confident, strong. But when it comes to being seen, if you're putting empty boxes on others, you're putting empty boxes on yourself. You're putting life on a shelf. We all want to be seen, past all the boxes and all the check marks, but do you want to be seen by that imaginary figure of your dreams or a real person? Real people are messy, awkward, or not perfect. If you hold great expectations of others, you will likely hold great expectations of yourself. If others aren't enough, you won't be enough. If you, like me, feel like you can't live up to those expectations, maybe it's because you weren't meant to. Maybe you're playing by the wrong rules and living out of the wrong motivation. And likewise, maybe you're expecting others to play by the wrong rules too and live by the wrong motivations. When I was at my lowest, I would sometimes release how I felt to my pastors and mentors. I'd say, I want to be married, I'm lonely, I'm struggling. And the response has always been the same. Stop worrying about it. It'll happen when you least expect it. Enjoy the season you're in. So I've tried to expect nothing while hoping to be noticed. I dreamed that someone would just magically show up as I sat at the library and ask me how my week's been, then we'd go for a walk on the green belt and listen to birds. But day after day, nothing happened, and my hope kept getting smaller and smaller. I've taken great solace in this verse. Lord, you have searched me, and you know me. You know when I sit down and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you know it completely. Psalms 139, 1 through 4. We are seen and fully known. There is something beautiful in those words. When I hear them, I feel a peace wash over me. Seen and fully known. That's the hardest part about love sometimes. In love, you risk being seen and fully known, and possibly being found unwanted. Remember how I said I was hoping someone would see me and accept me as I was? That desire came from an inability to accept myself. It came from the lie I was unworthy of love. In response to that, I tried to become someone I wasn't. I tried to have a yes because. I played the game. Just as some may desperately yearn to be seen and noticed, others may desperately fear being seen and try to hide, burying their talents in the ground and denying others of the good in themselves. Both stem deep down from a deeper fear of being known. How many years of your life will you spend contemplating that risk? How many years of your life will you spend raising your hand in worship to be seen? How many years of your life will you spend expecting and waiting for someone else to just come and approach you and be your dream? Jesus sees you and fully knows you and accepts you. How many years of your life will you spend checking off boxes and playing the game when you don't need to? How many years of your life will you avoid being seen and fully known? As my counselor once told me, whether we will it or not, every day is another day. We only have so much time on this earth. How long do you want to spend stuck in a decision, waiting on the edge of a pool afraid to jump in? Will you wait until your hair turns gray? The game is a lie. You can't have love without risk. You can't have love without trust. People don't have price tags, and neither do you. To love and love long, you will be seen and fully known. That's just a risk you'll have to take. You may face rejection, but just like life, you'll never succeed if you don't try. Are you ready to step into you? Are you ready to be seen and fully known? No more games. Set down your chess pieces, stand up from your seat, and step into who God made you to be.